nurtured and nursed by black women. And so in this process, these women, these African women who were raising these children, passed on the values and the behaviors to them. Let me very briefly take a short journey into some of these values of these women, some of the ideas and the beliefs and the behaviors of our great-grandmothers and our grandmothers, and for some of us, if we're old enough, for our mothers, to see what they tell us about how they socialize their children. What do these women tell us that we must do? And what values did they teach? And can we look at the way that black women raise their children and see what we must do for our own children? Because if children are not properly socialized, we will not leave descendants who will honor our memory and keep us alive. When we no longer call the ancestors' name, the culture dies, and we find ourselves in a similar situation that the ancient Egyptians of Kemet found themselves in thousands of years ago. And in Maulana Karenga's book, The Hosea, which is a compilation of the sacred writings of ancient Egypt, this is what our ancestors said when they had been invaded and people had started to take over. This is what they said. They said, "Behold now, how greatly the people have changed. One who once did not sleep even on a box now owns a bed. And those who once owned robes are now in rags. And those who once did not weave for themselves now own fine linen. And those who knew nothing of God now make offerings to him with the incense of others." End quote. And although things look bleak in this book of transformation written thousands of years ago, the ancient Kemites go on to say that Ma'at, righteousness and order, will return to its place, and Esphet, evil and chaos, will be driven away. And they talk about a king coming from the south named Amen, who will vindicate Egypt, born of a Nubian woman. We cannot let our children forget their ancestors. Cannot let them forget those who lie on the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, whose names we will never know. We must remember, lest our children will never know. I would like to talk a little bit about this research that I've been doing, where I've been interviewing older black women about their mothers. This has been going on since 1987. We have interviewed more than 100 women over the age of 65 about their mothers. And we asked them, tell me about your mother. How would you characterize her? What values did your mother give you? What sayings or proverbs did she use? What songs did she sing? What foods did she cook? What home remedies did she use when you were sick? And then what did you tell your children when you raised them? And when we say, how would you characterize them, the question of character gets at the very core of personality and the behavior of these older women. The question of value is pivotal in any discussion of culture. It is central to the culture, suggesting that that which propels people to action is the values that they believe in. And proverbs are important because we learn that Proverbs in Zingan Warfield Copper tells us is the daughter of experiences. They tell us how we should behave. The Proverbs focus on putting the values and the ideas of culture into practice. And we understand what we eat. And in Africa, food was and is central to life. It is not just something that they do. Your body is your temple. And there is a great concern about what you put in your temple. And the home remedies suggest that there is a holistic way of life of people. And Africans were herbologists. Many of us have old grandmothers or old uncles or whatever that always knew something about the herbs and could go into the backyard or go out into the woods and they could find the kind of herb that they needed in order to make you well. Today we have no insurance, we know nothing about herbs, and so we die. And music, when we say, what kind of songs did they sing? If I don't even get to that tonight, I want you to know that these old women, each one of them had a song that hit their soul. And somebody said, I knew when my mother was going through troubled waters because she would start hymning. And she started humming this tune. And it was a tune that she would just hum that seemed to just lift her out and bring her back to where she needed to be. Some of us could survive some of the onslaught if we just start humming a tune that really reached at our very inner fibers. So music is the life force. We know that by the music played today. That one of the things that they did for us, they took the drum away from us. When they took the drum away from us, they took the beat and that really sort of got very much at our inner being. So music is the life force of African society. One of my friends who did his dissertation in musicology says as he went back home, he was from Nigeria, he could not find any word in his culture for music. But there was music for death. There was music for birth. There was music for war. There was music for a wedding. Music was everywhere. And so that when all other fails, music connects us to the universal force, the divine force of becoming. And in these interviews, we wanted to find out how these various aspects of the culture were seen in the lives of older women as they raised their children. The average age of these women that we interviewed was 72, and the average age of their mothers, if they were living, would be 98. And many of the women that we were interviewed were the youngest in their families, sort of the only living children of these parents, and so they could hook us into women that go back 100 years ago. And this is how some of them described their mothers. And I'll just run through them. Somebody said my mother was very smart. Somebody said she couldn't read nor write, but she was very smart. See, Harriet Tubman couldn't read nor write. But she was so intelligent that she could bring 300 people from South up to Maryland and never lost anybody. That's a genius. Somebody said my mother was the most beautiful woman in the world. So she was a fine woman. And what I say to my young adolescents is, can somebody say, that's a fine young woman? It's a fine woman. Somebody said she was the most beautiful woman in the world. She was a lovely, sweet, good mother. Somebody said she was reserved. She never raised a voice. So she was a sweet old lady. She was a good woman. Another person said she devoted her life to her children. And as we've gotten caught into somebody else's existential basis, we say, hey, that's using us. That's whatever. And I would not be standing here today if my mother had not devoted her life to me. She's the only person I know I could wake up 2 o'clock in the morning and say, I'm hungry, fix me some grits and eggs, and can you make me some biscuits? See, when you get into somebody else's way, it's like, I can't do that, you're using me. Somebody else said she was sacrificing. So she took care of us. Somebody said my mother had 9 children. And she always had time for each of us. Somebody else said she prepared us for life. And at another level, these women said we never went to bed hungry. These were poor children. When somebody said, although we were poor, I never remember going without something that we really needed. So what did they say about these values? What kind of values did they learn? And I'll just run through them. Each one of them we could write something about in terms of our training that we do with our young people, in terms of our therapy. First one, which I think is very basic to Maya, says be kind to others. Treat people